All right, welcome back to the show, Katy. I am so glad to have you here again for my own selfish reasons, as always.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
So for those of you that have not had the opportunity to be introduced to Katy Wells, I've had her on the show before. She is my go-to for minimalizing and decluttering and really creating a less stressful physical space. I can declutter what's going on in people's heads. I can declutter their calendar, but I am still a work in progress myself when it comes to systems and stuff around the home. I swear things like there's invisible people that come in my home at night and just put stuff in here that I don't know how it got here. So I'm thrilled to have you back. And today we really want to, we're going to have the Planapalooza event coming soon. And Katy is one of the 4 guest experts who's going to be coming into the Planapalooza community and really sharing some tips as we think about that bigger picture yearly planning. What are some strategies and things that we can put in place to help us get rid of clutter, get rid of physical stress over the coming year without it being this completely overwhelming process. So know that that's coming inside of Planapalooza. But I asked Katy here today to kind of help us talk through when we're looking at, which I think a lot of us are feeling this need to have less these days. I feel it more so than I have, I think, ever before. But when I look around my house or other people's houses, it's almost, how do I even start when I'm not an expert in organizing or decluttering? And can this be something that we chip away at and actually stay on top of instead of, well, I got to take a month off from work and, clear my calendar. And that's the only way that I'm going to start to make progress on this.
Yes. Okay. Everything you just said is so relatable. I was like, I remember thinking that. I remember thinking that. I remember thinking that and not taking any action because I was like, I can't take a month off work. I have kids and they're going to be here until they're 18 at least. So I guess for the next 18 years, I'll just live in clutter, right?
Because even if you could take the time off from work, what is someone going to take your children for the entire month that you would need them gone to feel like you can make progress?
Right. And so I think I'll touch on a few different things because I could go a million ways with this. I think, and you mentioned this, you're like, I've been feeling the need to simplify and get rid of some of this physical clutter. And I think part of that comes into bringing awareness into how your physical environment is impacting you. Sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow, right? Because a lot of times we're looking around our homes and we want to point our finger at the kids for not picking up their toys or at our partners for tossing their work stuff on the kitchen table and all of these excess possessions. But sometimes it's like, well, maybe it's my shopping habits, right? And all these other things. And so I think bringing awareness into how you feel in your space, and on the flip side of that coin, how you feel in a space when there's less stuff. So maybe you spend 10 minutes decluttering your kitchen counters, right? It's been a clutter hotspot, there's mess, it's been nagging you every single day. You declutter, you put stuff away, and now tune into your body. How are you feeling? What emotions are you having? Do you feel like you have more headspace? Do you feel energized? Like, oh, I actually like being in the kitchen right now because there's not so much stuff screaming my name and calling for my attention. And then, so I think that's the first thing is awareness, always, always awareness. And then, yes, you can see declutter success without taking weekends, without wasting entire weekends or taking months off work. But for a lot of us, and this was me too, it means revisiting our version of success and creating different benchmarks for what success can look like, because I thought decluttering had to look a certain way to be successful, meaning an entire weekend, right? Dedicating a whole hours and chunks of my time in order to be successful. But we're all busy and none of us have this elusive 2 to 3 hour chunks of time in our week or a day or even our month, And so, right. So a new benchmark of success for me was like, I'm just going to declutter for 10 minutes a day for 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I'll do it when I can. I put it on my calendar. If the kids were sick, right? Life happens. You're so good at helping us because just like you need me, I need you to create these schedules and systems that work for like real life. It's not always going to be perfect, but that one simple habit of decluttering it as best I could 10 minutes a day for 5 days made a huge difference. And I think that's where people get stuck. They're like, well, I'm not going to see results fast enough. So this isn't worth it. And it's just still too overwhelming. So they give up before they realize that the cumulative impact of decluttering for 5 days a week, 10 minutes, it adds up. And they don't ever quite, a lot of people give up before they hit that threshold where they're really reaping the benefits.
Right. So I love this idea of 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. Now, if I were to be just starting out at that, and I'm thinking about like, there's a couple spaces in my house that we haven't tackled yet that are like the big elephant in the room. And the thought of 10 minutes is, oh, I feel like I will open the door. There's two closets in particular. I'm going to open the door and just stare at the closet
For the whole 10 minutes.
for 10 minutes, because I'll be like, well, what can I really do in 10 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
What are some quick wins of like, okay, set the timer, go. Where do we start? Like, and I mean, we've got this closet when I walk in from the garage. It's like is it a pantry? Is it a coat closet? Is it where we throw our school stuff? Is it the dog closet? Yes, to all of the above. Like, we don't even know what it is to even know where to start with it.
And you kind of just answered your own question. So I would always encourage people to start with like, what's the purpose of the space you're wanting to work on? Like, most people don't. Usually when there's frustration within, surrounding the contents of your home, it's because they don't align with the purpose. So if that purpose, and here's the thing, a lot of people are like, in my space, in the declutter minimalism space, like, you can't have a junk drawer, or you can't have a catch-all space. But it's like, honey, you can have one of those spaces if that's the purpose of that closet.
Yes.
Megan, is to be like, here, it's for dog leashes, it's for back to school, it's for a temporary drop zone for things I need to find a home for, but I don't have one for yet. Like, that's okay. But bringing awareness into the purpose of that space is always step one. And then looking at the stuff that doesn't fit within that space and within that purpose, and go, well, this doesn't fit these three purposes I have for this space. Is this extra? Is this true clutter? Do I just need to find a new home for it? So that's a really quick way to identify what doesn't belong.
Oh, that's going to be really helpful, because and I think part of my frustration with it is, as I feel like it needs to serve one purpose, but I'm like, but it can't just be one thing. It does need to fit about 4 needs, but I think I've felt like I don't know where to start because I had to not allow it to be a multi-purpose closet.
Yeah. And so adding in some more flexibility, it's like, so why do we sometimes think things like that? I felt very rigid.
Yeah.
And I think maybe it's just things we hear or see other people do and it works for them, but it's not a one size fits all solution, right?
Mm-hmm. So if someone were, hypothetically, Megan, setting out a plan of 2023 to say, okay, by the end of 2023, I want to have every closet, every cabinet, every space in our home serve a clear purpose, and the whole family's in alignment with what the purpose is, and that each of those spaces is structured to serve that purpose. What strategies could you give on where might be quick wins to start with that? 'Cause I mean, it's a lot. That's why I'm like, I'm going to take the whole year to do this.
Yeah.
But any suggestions on spaces to consider first, or types of clutter to think about first, etc.?
I don't think there's any perfect place to start. I always recommend that you start with usually spaces that you tend to spend a lot of time in, or that are just common clutter hotspots. So for a lot of people, that's really any surface area in the home. Particularly because that's what they do. That's just clutter. They just attract clutter. We actually got rid of our coffee table years ago. I don't know if I told you this, because I was like,
No.
the only purpose this is serving is just it holds toys and clutter and random stuff that I pick up throughout the day and put it there to have to handle later. So I got rid of the coffee table and it was like, no regrets. So anyway,
Wow.
sometimes we need to also think, is the purpose of this piece of furniture, is it doing
Or
anything
clutter.
else for me beyond just holding mess or holding clutter? Like, a lot of times, if we're honest, it's like, actually, I actually don't need that piece of furniture because it's making my life harder, not easier. But I digress. So anyway, going back to like the 2023 decluttering in a year, I think that's an amazing goal. It took me 2.5 years, and that was with a lot of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But surface areas are a great place to start: living room, kitchen, any communal areas. And I think, you have the decluttering aspect, you have the daily reset aspect. So tackling expected mess, getting a handle on that so it doesn't get overwhelming, because so many people, when they're looking around their house, looking at all the stuff, it's a combination of both clutter and expected mess. So you have those two kind of focal points. And then on the flip side of both.
So what's that subtle difference of clutter versus
Yes.
expected mess?
So clutter, I would say a common term or a common way to define that is excess or things you simply don't need, use, love anymore, right? Maybe it served a purpose 6 months ago, 6 years ago, but it's collecting dust and it's impacting and taking up physical space in your home, but also in your mind. It doesn't have to be. And I think the thing with clutter is a lot of people kind of envision like the show Hoarders, like it has to be this excessive amount. But it doesn't have to be. I could open a drawer right now underneath me and probably like maybe I could find one piece of paper I don't need anymore, right? It doesn't, I think so.
I've been thinking about the drawer with our utensils. I'm like, I know I have 5 of the exact same Pampered Chef rubber spatula.
Yes, that's it.
Why?
That's it. But so many of us wait till that drawer is exploding and then we're like, oh, it's a clutter problem. But it doesn't have to be excessive. So that's kind of something I've been exploring lately more in my content. Whereas expected mess is just mess that happens from everyday life. Typically, these are all things that are used, loved, right? The water bottles that didn't get put away, the backpacks that are on the floor that need to be hung up, the homework that needs to go back in the backpack or back to school or back in your bin, all these different things. So it's those things are used and needed. It's just a matter of they need to get put back where they belong when they're not in use. Huge difference in,
that just freed up so much space for me on recognizing that difference. Because to me, I label it all as clutter.
Right.
And then family members get frustrated because they're like, but no, that's not clutter, it's my stuff. And they're talking about the expected mess. But to me, it's all clutter. And so I kind of panic on how to manage the two. So can I pick your brain on the expected mess for a minute?
100%.
Again, this is like my personal decluttering. So and I'm sure everybody has this, whether you have kids or not, but and for us, it's one counter in our kitchen is where all the now I'm going to call it expected mess goes. The Rubik's Cube that was being played with that didn't get put back upstairs. We're into origami lately, the 8,000 folded whatever's that are treasures at the moment, and so they all collect there. And any strategies on other than me then picking them all up, getting so annoyed, losing my cool, and then going around and putting everything back where the expected messes belong. How do you get support with family on dealing with helping spread the load of the expected mess and how we minimize that?
I think a big part of it comes down to like regular conversations. Sometimes I think as a parent, like oftentimes I wish I could tell my kids one time, like, listen, here's where your backpacks go. Please unload your lunch boxes after school. They go here. Here's why, right? But the fact is, like, part of parenting is just repeating yourself for a long time. I believe. It's like 90% of it, right? And so there's that aspect. And then I think oftentimes our family doesn't understand the what, which is, can be decluttering or handling their expected mess if they don't understand the why. And so even breaking down really simple aspects of clutter. And here's the thing, even though it's not clutter, we're talking about expected mess here, that stuff that's just out and maybe needs to be put away, right? Our brain doesn't necessarily, it responds very similarly to whether it's expected mess or clutter, right? It increases our cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone. That doesn't make us feel good, right? It's harder to focus, make dinner, whatever else we're doing in the kitchen or said space. And so bringing that up to our kids and say, listen, clutter, whether it's clutter or it's just piles of stuff that we need to put away, it impacts the way we feel. And so creating really spacious rooms, or, when it comes to your bedroom, having a bedroom that's a reflection of who you are now, and the importance of doing daily resets and how that's going to help you versus kind of making it all about us. Here's why I want you to do this so I feel better. Not that can't be an avenue you go down, because it should be a team effort, in my opinion. And here's how it does impact mom. And so one way I did this with my kids is I said, as you start to help out and do these daily resets, that means I have more free time. So that means we can play extra games of Connect Four or Chutes and Ladders or dominoes at night, because my kids love that. That's like our family time.
Yeah.
And so then they're like, okay, right, that's really exciting to them. And they can understand that at 5 and 7 years old, that, hey, if I do this, that takes a few seconds, It's going to mean more family time or whatever's important to them.
Oh, I think even just, I'm excited to sit down with my family tonight and even just talk about that difference of expected
Yes.
mess versus clutter. Because I've been on this rampage lately. And when I say, my goal for 2023 is the house, I have, full disclosure, I've been chipping away at this for several months already. So it's not like I'm rolling into 2023 with the whole house needing it. I've got rooms that are already done and we're feeling good about, but I'd like to finish it in 2023. But as they're seeing me, go crazy and I'm tackling this cabinet this weekend or whatever, I think they're getting anxious that I'm going to be getting rid of their stuff. Right? Because they're like,
Yeah,
oh
well,
no, mom's
that's
on a
normal,
rampage.
right?
But to talk to them about, no, I want to reduce clutter versus and let's create systems and places for our
Yes,
expected messes,
that's
and
right.
to be able to even differentiate that with each one of them, because we all have things that are treasures for us that aren't, looks like clutter to me, but it's not to someone else.
That's
And I
it.
want to honor
Yes.
that for everybody. But I think that's going to really help us have a better conversation to say, instead of clean up your stuff, clean up your clutter, just, hey, we all create expected messes for the things that you love. We need to
That's right.
create a system and a place for those. So thank you for that. That already is making me feel,
Yes.
when I walk, I know I'm going to walk into the kitchen and see the Rubik's cubes and origami paper sitting there when we're done. And now I'm not going to be so annoyed or be thinking of it as clutter, and instead going, all right, what conversation can we have to help clean up with the expected mess there? So good.
Yeah. And I think it's
Um,
just a quick note. It's a reminder for us too to see that there is beauty in mess, right? Like that was an opportunity for connection, or maybe you have tons of dirty dishes after, right, but you just had an opportunity to have a nice meal, or there's laundry to be
together.
done, but that means and there are all kinds of ways you can look at it. But anytime that we have a lot of play in this house, like there's expected mess afterwards. That's just part of the process. And so when you
Absolutely.
tune into the daily resets and just making habits, it kind of just puts your mind at ease knowing, hey, I've got a plan for this mess. Brain, like, don't stress out. We got this covered.
Yeah. Now I think your daily reset has been a game changer for me. It has been a game changer for so many women in my top community who've had the pleasure of hearing that from you. Can you give just like the 30-second overview of what these daily resets, and you can have more than one in a day, but what a daily reset is?
Yeah, so daily reset is when you put everything back that is out on the typically surface areas back to where it lives full time. Because, right, we're not all perfect. We don't come home and put our keys where the keys go. Sometimes we toss our purse on the ground, where, wherever it doesn't belong. And so the idea behind doing these 1 to 3 times a day in a variety of spaces in your home is that it prevents the expected mess from building, getting too overwhelming, and then, right, adding clutter into the mix and losing things. It just becomes paralyzing, frustrating, and it's gonna, for most people, like it did for me, lead you down a road of lots of negative feelings, including resentment, right,
Resentment.
shame.
Yeah.
What's wrong with me? Why can't I just have a tidy home? What am I lacking, right, that I can't do this? All these things. And so it's the beauty of it is it takes seconds to do, versus if you just let that expected mess build and build days later, it just adds up. It takes too much time. And I think for, I know a lot of your listeners are parents or caregivers. I think it's just a wonderful life skill to pass along, or maybe they have partners they need to help teach this life skill to, of just managing stuff, right? Stuff management, from like a very high level. It's going to last your entire family and you a lifetime to be able to learn these skills now.
Yeah. And that when you taught us that, I realized like we sort of had some, but I hadn't been like officially named it or really thought about it that way. And it has given me such a release of frustration, knowing now when I have those reset times. So, there's usually some buildup of dishes kind of late morning to end of school that happen in the sink from breakfast and all that. And it used to drive me nuts. And again, resentment now. No, because we have that reset time when I know it will matter 3 or 4 minutes, everything's going to get cleaned up, dishwasher, all that. And then,
Mhm.
and knowing that that's coming allows me to not get frustrated or whatever in the moment. And then the family knows that it's coming too. So everyone can jump in and have their,
Exactly.
roles and responsibilities. We were watching, I have to tell you before we wrap things up, because it made me think of you. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Did you ever, or did your kids ever do the Veggie Tales?
Oh, it's been years, but yes, I've seen some episodes. Yeah.
So every time, like my daughter's favorite one was Madame Blueberry, which is all about stuff and her need to accumulate stuff. And Madame
Oh.
Blueberry goes into the stuff mart. And there's this whole song, and you just see her piling up all the things. And so that's what we use here at home when things start to look bad. I'm like, guys, it looks like we just went to the stuff mart. Like, no more Madame Blueberries.
That's
But
awesome.
now I always think of you when that Madame Blueberry song comes in as like the good entryway into not having too much stuff.
Hey, I'll take it. If you think of me with Madame Blueberry, I'll take that as a compliment.
Well, you reform us Madame Blueberries.
Yes,
But
okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
if anyone with little kids, if you've not done the Veggie Tales, I highly recommend the Madame Blueberry episode on the Stuff Mart. It's really good. Well, we are looking forward to having you back in Planapalooza. I am
Yes.
thrilled. I'm going to be sharing in the show notes a link to kind of two of your great, I think, entry points into decluttering. One specifically around toy declutter that I know so many women in my
Yes.
community have already gotten a ton out of. And then you run periodic challenges throughout the year as well. And the great news about that is there's always an opportunity to get signed up for either the upcoming one or to be able to join in on one that's going on as well. Where is the best place for people to connect with you if they're kind of getting ready to launch into a decluttering and minimalizing journey?
Really, three areas. YouTube. I've started a YouTube channel, and you can find me under my name, Katy Wells. And sometimes I have to think about my handle there, and that's sad. So it's just my name. My podcast, The Maximize Minimalist, if you're a podcast listener. And then my favorite social media platform is Instagram. So I like doing reels and stories, and just really valuable content on there for you too.
Yeah. And I really encourage, like, if you're podcast listeners, subscribe to the Maximize Minimalist. The show is incredible. I never miss an episode now.
Aw.
But what I really appreciate for those of you on Instagram, Katy does an amazing job of just in the moment being like, as you yourself are working through, like you'll catch yourself. I notice sometimes like, I was just about to, like, why was I about to purchase that? I don't need it. And you kind of
Yes.
walk us through that journey. And I will tell you, it has opened my eyes to habits and why I'm drawn to certain things. And it's really helped me minimalize some areas in my life I didn't even realize were problematic. So I appreciate all that you share out there. It's really, really helpful.
Aw, thanks.
All right, guys, we'll see you in Planapalooza soon. Thank you so much, Katy.
Thanks, Megan.